So apparently, millennials are now killing homeownership. At least, of course, that's what happens whenever you ask somebody who's a boomer or part of the establishment press, who doesn't seem to understand the problems facing the millennial generation. Well, it turns out the Federal Reserve was one of those organizations until they actually decided to look into the numbers. And then they realized, oh, no, it turns out millennials aren't buying homes because they happen to be broke. Fascinating. Now, this new paper published by the Fed is connecting rising student debt to dropping home ownership among young Americans between 2005 and 2014. Now, shocker, right? So now, the collective amount, just to give you some context, of American student loan debt is now at $1.5 trillion. That's more than credit card debt. That's more than student loans. So it's not shocking that this is something that's preventing people my age and younger from getting a home. So now here's the thing. We're in the process of trying to get a home, and let me tell you what, it is very difficult. So what we pay here for rent is astronomical compared to what a mortgage would be for a place that's actually larger than where we live. So thinking about getting into a house is kind of a no-brainer, even though it's taking on a lot of debt. Well, it turns out after 30 years, you've got some assets. Having a home, owning a home is actually one of the biggest ways to build generational wealth. So knowing all that, it's like, hey, well, why not, right? Let's find a place that we love in a place that we like, and then go for it, right? So now, anyway, it turns out that getting a home is incredibly difficult if you have student loans. Again, they really do count that against you from personal experience. My wife has excellent credit. She's got an excellent credit score. She's got a pretty decent job, and so she gets a pretty decent paycheck. Her student loans, she has too much of them to where it upsets her debt to income ratio where she's not able to borrow enough for a home. So that is one way, personally, that impacts home ownership. And so that's my personal experience. Turns out there are a lot of people in the same position that are in our age group. In fact, home ownership, according to the Wall Street Journal, among people ages 24 to 32, fell 9 percentage points to 36% from 45% between 2005 and 2014, according to the Fed. While many factors affected homeowner rate, the Fed said 2 percentage points, or about a fifth, of the decline was tied directly to student debt. That translated into 400,000 borrowers who could have owned a home by 2014, but didn't because of student loans. Now, of course, as one of the ways that I explained, having student debt made it difficult to get a mortgage. Now that impacts your credit score. It makes it go down, obviously. But not only that, but making student loan payments is incredibly expensive. So again, I pay student loans. My wife pays student loans. So that's a significant chunk of our income that goes to repaying those loans. Now, look, we made those loans, we got those loans. And so, yeah, right now, we have to repay them. We don't have a choice, as you can't go bankrupt. You can't declare bankruptcy and get rid of those loans. You can't discharge those loans at all. And I do believe that Betsy DeVos got rid of one of the very ways to be able to get those loans off your, that basically get them forgiven after 10 years of paying them on time. So that program's gone. So now students are stuck with student loans for basically the rest of their lives. And that makes it very, very difficult to actually be a part of the economy. Now, the Wall Street Journal interviewed somebody, a young man, Tyler McKinney. Now, Tyler McKinney, who's 25 years old, he graduated from the University of Alaska Anchorage in 2017. He borrowed around the average $33,000 in student loans. Now, from the Journal, the degree led to a solid job in information technology and a salary of $68,300. Well, goddamn, that is a pretty nice salary, right? I wish they would actually find someone who graduated from a 4-year college and who couldn't find a job in their field and is now working for $10 an hour. I would love to see the Wall Street Journal interview someone like that. But even so, they interviewed this guy who's doing extremely well. especially compared to a lot of other 25-year-olds. And they still found that he is unable to buy a home. He says, look, I'm not going to buy anything until I pay off my student loans. So he's renting an apartment for about $875 a month in Anchorage while devoting more than $500 a month towards his student loan debt. His balance is now $22,000. McKinney says, look, I could afford to buy it, but I'm going to wait. He said, if I'm going to buy a house before my student debt was paid off, I'd just be paying off my student debt until I'm in my 50s. I want to get that monkey off my back until I make a few new investments. Until I make any new investments. So, look, Tyler McKinney, he's doing very well, and he actually seems to be incredibly smart with his money. I wish I was that smart when I was 25 years old. Nonetheless, even he's like, oh man, I got all this student loan debt I got to pay off. I don't want to be paying it off till I'm freaking 50 years old. I want to pay it off now. I want to pay it off as soon as possible, so I will just avoid buying a house, getting myself into further debt before, until I pay off this debt. And that's what this is. We have consumer debt levels that are insanely high. And it's because of this stuff. It's because of student loans. If only we had a program that, or a system that actually made it so that people could go to college and get an education and get those good paying jobs without having to go into $33,000 or sometimes $100,000 into debt. Wouldn't such a system be wonderful? But instead, we have what we have, and unfortunately, what we have right now is disastrous to young people. And an example, the Fed research says that the burden of student loans right now overwhelms the benefits of going to college. And unfortunately, that is 100% true. Researchers wrote, while investing in post-secondary education continues to yield on average positive and substantial returns, burdensome student loan debt levels may be lessening these benefits. Maybe. No, absolutely. A second Fed report released earlier noted that many young people with student debt are leaving rural areas where they grew up to be in more urban areas. Now, that's sensible. That makes a ton of sense. If you have all this debt, why would you stay in places that don't have opportunity? No, you're going to have to go to a place that has more high-paying jobs. You know what that ends up hurting? Rural areas. So now the cities, more people are going to the cities. That has a higher standard of living, of course, and you need more money to live there. Places like New York and LA have really high standards of living and really high costs of living. And so you need an even better job and an even better salary just to be able to live there in a studio apartment. So, and yet, despite all of this, researchers say that it's still pretty much impossible to buy a home without getting a college degree. They said basically, this is Ralph McLaughlin, Deputy Chief Economist at CoreLogic, Inc. Basically, the only way to get your foot in the housing door is to have a degree, even if it comes with debt. But when you have that debt, you also have that noose around your neck in order, can't really say noose, but it's more of a weight around your neck that prevents you from getting a mortgage. Look, I've got a brother-in-law, super smart guy, pretty successful. He's gone into the medical field via, I believe it was a physician's assistant, a PA. I mean, he's like, we had conversation. He's like, I'm going to school. He's like, I'm pretty much self-financing here, and I'm taking out student debt as well, and the stuff that I can't self-finance. And he's like, my credit score is kind of hell. He's like, I had great credit before I went into this. I've got terrible credit. Now, lucky for him, he's already bought a house, so he doesn't have to face the housing market. But for somebody who does take out that debt earlier in life without having a home and without having a vehicle, well, you're pretty much out of luck if you want to get a home after taking out that enormous amount of debt. So that's what's going on here. And it's disastrous that we have these kind of policies that are anti-student, anti-consumer, and we've got to do something about this student loan debt. It is a bubble. It is going to burst. And who knows what's going to happen if we don't actually fix this. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.